And what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this episode of the Sneaker Principal Podcast. This is Uche Joku, the Sneaker Principal, and welcome to this Sunday edition. Thank you for joining me. And what's going on, everyone? And of course, as usual, it's time to start making sure that everything here is working correctly. So I'm on YouTube right now. That's what you were hearing. So I turned that audio off. Let's check out LinkedIn. What's going on LinkedIn? Make sure folks on LinkedIn are joining us. And let's see here. And what's going on LinkedIn? Let's look at Facebook. Are we set to go on Facebook? Yes, we are on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, welcome. Again, this is Uche and Joku, Sneaker Principal Podcast. And we're here live on Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm checking for Twitter. Twitter feed is on. Of course, I'm making sure that I am on all the platforms that I promised to be on, because again, I want to be able to take your comments as they come in. And let me see here. What's going on Facebook tonight? Come on, Facebook. Don't do me wrong this evening. All right, Facebook. I don't know what's going on with Facebook. And then, of course, LinkedIn feed. And we're on LinkedIn. Awesome. So let me turn the volume off on that right there. So the only space that I'm not sure what's going on is actually Facebook. So I'm going to try again one more time on Facebook to see what's going on here. What am I missing? Why aren't you cooperating this evening? Facebook, usually you're doing well. Maybe it's because I'm calling you Facebook. I should call you Meta. Meta is good. And one more time. And maybe Facebook is just not working. I am so sorry. If you're on Facebook and you're like trying to wonder what's going on here, I have no idea. But you know what? For the sake of time, we're here. We're 2 minutes into the hour. Again, welcome everyone. As if you've been following this show, you know that on Sundays, what I like to do is just kind of go over what's happening in education right now around the country, as per what media is telling us is happening around the country in education. So let's go ahead and just jump into this. Facebook is breaking my heart right now. But if you're here with me on YouTube, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you. If you're here with me on LinkedIn, again, thank you so much for the love on LinkedIn. I appreciate everyone on LinkedIn who's been very supportive, especially over the course of this summer as I made my transition into private life outside of the public school education system. And then if you're on Twitter, again, Twitter family, thank you so much. And a lot of love there, a lot of reposts of my content. So I really appreciate all of you that do that. And Facebook, Facebook is my newest space because I haven't really done much on Facebook in the past. And my OCD is kicking in, and I'm like, why is Facebook not working? But it's okay. So I'm sure at some point in time it'll sort itself out. If you happen to be on Facebook, and you follow me, let me know in a comment, either on any other platform, if you see me there at all. And maybe I'm not, but it's okay. But let's go ahead. Let's start today. What's going on in the news? As you guys know, I think I've shared this with you before, I love to go to do my news search on Apple News. Apple News kind of like gets everything together for you in one space, which I love. And then I can kind of like scroll and see what's going on. So let me make this all fit into the screen here. So I'm on my phone right now, and these are the latest news stories happening in according to what Apple prioritizes for their news service on the Apple iPhone or any of the Apple products. So right now, Washington Post, first one, student loan relief to move ahead despite hold. Let me look at that real quick. Secretary says. And if you've been watching anything on the news, you know that this has been big, and I'm seeing a pattern here. The next story here, NBC News, student debt relief moving full speed ahead despite GOP-led lawsuits, and education. I'm sure education secretary says, but that's what seems to be trending right now. This is what is being said by Cardano. Axios says also again, Cardano education department moving full speed ahead. Your student, I'm sure, loan relief. Fox News. Wow, this is back-to-back facts. Face the Nation, focus groups of GOP, Democrat parents sound off on war. This is interesting. Face the Nation, focus groups of GOP, Democrat parents sound off on woke culture overtaking U.S. education. Interesting one. If you were on the show this past Friday, if you listened to the show this past Friday, I had I was talking about an article that I saw, and no, actually it wasn't an article. It was a video sent to me of a black gentleman in Florida, I believe, who was talking to a school board and making this argument about why are we spending so much time, or why so much resources being spent on CRT, and not necessarily on what's happening within the schools with a dropping literacy rates and math scores. So that kind of took over that whole entire conversation on Friday, this past Friday. So again, woke culture, and I'll be honest with you, maybe I'm finally admitting that I'm getting old, and I've never understood. I know what it is, woke culture, but I've never quite understood it, because the whole notion about being woke, and for me, being a born in the 70s, 80s baby, and having teachers who literally had teachers when I was going to school in California, in Inglewood, at La Tejera Junior High School and Inglewood High School. I had teachers who literally were old enough to have been teenagers, in some cases, young adults during the Civil Rights Movement, and in my mind, I just couldn't see that being. I couldn't see anything else being as woke as that. Like, how do you get more woke than the Civil Rights Movement? How do you get more woke than deciding to put yourself at harm's way, being hosed down, being chased by dogs, being spit at, going to sitting encounters, having to police your own neighborhood because marauders of vigilantes would come into the neighborhood in the name of racial purity or redlining or whatever it is, and harassing you just because of the color of your skin. So into this space, when we talk about woke culture, I struggle to figure out, to understand woke in relative to what exactly, But at the same time, I'm a strong proponent of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that's something that needs to be dealt with, and so spaces exist where where there's no reason as a person of color that you should ever feel marginalized or not included, or knowing that you're not getting the same opportunities as others because of color of your skin. Especially is this something that we're teaching kids in schools? How do we empower kids to go into the real world and be successful if we also know that there are powers that be that will do everything possible to prevent it from happening. So, but this whole notion of woke culture, and I think I'm gonna stand on the side of saying that I think a lot of times these days the issue is, how woke are we trying to be against the backdrop of our children not being fully educated. Even with the basic content, reading, writing, and arithmetic. I believe that it's kind of hard to dive deep into CRT or those levels of sophisticated conversations about the world and what's happening, if the children or the young people that you're trying to push to be critical thinkers in this space can't read or write or struggling in math. I made this argument that, that a lot of the mental health issues we're having and emotional issues that our children are having, a chunk of that is their inability to function properly in the traditional academic setting. If you can't read, how does that make you feel? If you go to school and you're failing everything because you don't have foundational skills, because at some point in time you got thrown in special ed, or you had teachers, or you were in schools where you weren't being provided with what you needed to be successful. So with that being said, how do you not expect to a certain degree that there's going to be some emotional issues happening? There's going to be some gaps, not just academically, but just self-esteem wise in our children. So, let's move on here. What else is on the news here? Again, the next one, student debt relief. Could move full speed ahead. So for those of you who are wondering, like, what's going on with the student loan situation? So apparently, one of the circuit courts put a block on Biden's move towards loan forgiveness. I think he's trying to forgive people $10,000 or $20,000, depending on the type of loans you had and your financial situation. And there's a big push for everybody to apply. I applied. I'm gonna tell you right now, I have a ridiculous amount of student loans. But again, I thank God for being in a position to be gainfully employed. But at the same time, a lot of people who went to college and studied and paid and invested in education for subject areas and for learnings for career fields that no longer exist. That's one of the things people don't talk about. You go to school because you're seeing the world in one way, but with technology and how the world is moving, all of a sudden the things that you thought were going to be are not there anymore. So you've had a lot of people who had to go back and be re-educated. Because think about it, if you took out student loans or whatever to pay for school, you came out and you couldn't get a job or get the income commensurate with that what you paid for that education. And then you find yourself being like, okay, I need to get retrained. So you go back to school to get another degree, but because you weren't making the money to begin with based on your first degree, so now you double on the hole. And some people have done this over and over again. Some people are in fields where it required multiple degrees, for them to be able to even be gainfully employed. So when I'm looking at this, right now, one of the things I'm asking myself is, what are we not seeing here? Because the argument, but the GOP is the ones who are pushing this. They're pushing to block it. They're saying that we should not be we should not be paying for the poor decisions of people, or bailing out people who, or persons or whoever who, because they made a decision to take that money out. And I think it's interesting, but I saw an article, or was it a meme, something, where somebody said, wow, it's interesting how people are so anti, bailing out, or they use the term bailing out, right? But so anti, the relief of student loans on people. But where were they when banks, Lehman Brothers, and all these big banks were out there wilding out, and all of a sudden the government came to bail them out for billions. And honestly, I think the billions they talk about is nothing. I think it's actually probably in the trillions, because some of these entities even shut down. They no longer exist. So the question is, we can bail out corporations, but we can't bail out the American citizens who are trying to just survive, who are just trying to do what they can do to make ends meet. In a society that says, for you to be successful, go get a college degree, go get an education, and everything will be okay. Listen, I went to college in the early 90s. 1993 is when was my first year in college. And I can tell you right now, there were ideas and thoughts around education that no longer exist anymore. There were career fields that people are thinking about like, man, I'm going to go into this field that literally doesn't even exist anymore. Or if they do exist, there had to be some serious retraining and retooling of people who had those original degrees so they can survive in today's world. Back in 1993, when people talked about technology, they were talking about, okay, being an engineering major, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, and then maybe computer science, which was still relatively new. Like those guys who were like, yo, I'm a computer science major. My brain did not even envision any of this. Like this, what I'm doing right here, right now, this space right now, this technology and software and everything. I switched cameras so you can see. This was not even imaginable. The ability to sit in front of a computer as I'm sitting right now and come to you as though like I'm running my own radio station. Like this tech did not exist. So imagine like listen, I was a film and media major, film and media studies major. Other places were called communications, and I was thinking about radio. Even in college, I had a radio show. So I was a co-host of a radio show in college. Let me not say I had my radio show. It was me, the homeboy, James, and Rhonda. We had in college you have you want to do your own radio show, and they give you that crazy. I think we had it was 12:30 to 3:30, something crazy. We had 3 hours from 12:30 to 3:30, and we would just get on the air and talk junk and play music, but back then, the whole notion of what I was studying and me practicing technology in this broadcasting space was a giant room with all these big machines everywhere, decks and record players and all these different things. And all of a sudden now, here we are in 2022. If you have a phone and the capability to stream live, you can literally throw on your Apple AirPod Maxes and just hit record and go live and start a live podcast. And if you know what you're doing, the quality sounds pretty damn good. To the point where, I still listen to radio, and I feel like what people are doing in their houses on podcasts and places like that is so much better quality than some of these radio stations that are out there right now that have been around for years. So now, let me go back. So people went to school and got all these degrees and were like, I can't wait to go into the world and make money and live this life. And a lot of them, it didn't happen. Not a lot. The majority didn't happen. It just didn't. So people are carrying these student loans, and because again, it was touted as the way it was. I remember when I was applying for my student loans, the way it was described to me, it was like it was free money. You're going to college, so now envision how much money you're going to make when you get out. You're going to be college educated. Then in my case, as a young black male who was first generation to go to college in America, I was a standard bearer for my siblings, and then I went to University of Rochester, one of the top ranked schools in the country. Like I was sold the bill of goods I was sold was that, yo, you will be successful. The world is open to you. It was like it was guaranteed. No, it wasn't. It wasn't guaranteed, because I ended up going through three distinctly different jobs out of college before I ended up in education. And the only reason I came to education was because I thought because it was a free master's degree, and I thought that this was going to be my launching pad in preparation to go to law school. And imagine if I had gone to law school 3 years or up to 4 years if I did part-time, that would have been probably, knowing me and my need to make sure that I'm attending the best institutions, that probably would have been like another $200,000-$300,000 easily, to get a law degree. But we do these things in the hopes of a great outcome, but that's not the case. So a lot of Americans are struggling right now. This recession is hurting people. you know, and the relief that people are fighting over, for a lot of Americans, this, you know, even knocking off $10,000, $20,000 off your loans can be a game changer. Because you knock off $20,000 off, and then you do a refinance, your payments drop. You know, even you end up having another extra $100 a month, you know, into coming into the household. That's a lot, man. Come on now. I go grocery shopping right now. I'm like, what just happened? For the same amount of money that I would have spent 2 years ago, you know, it's costing me significantly more for everything. And it's not just me, for all of you. So this debt relief is like, man, could give people breathing room. But the argument that some people are saying, like, you know, it's not fair. I paid mine. Why can't you? Yeah, because again, listen, I can only speak for people who look like me. I'm very lucky to be where I'm at right now. There's a lot of folks that look like me who are smarter than me, but just based on circumstance, don't have access to good jobs. So just because you went to college doesn't mean anything for a lot of people. It's like, okay. I've met people who are busting tables with a college degree. I've met people who are working, you know, jobs that are you know, retail, service oriented, with advanced degrees, but they just couldn't find the position or opportunity in those spaces, because at the end of the day, just because you have a degree doesn't mean there's a job out there for you. And then when you get those student loans, you're making hopefully a calculated risk. But again, with the way the world is changing, the economy is changing, that calculation you make these days it's almost like you're just rolling the dice, you know? So again, I said a lot, but I say all that to say that the relief is necessary, because at the end of the day, man, people are struggling, you know, and I don't quite understand why it's such an issue. It's such an issue to help Americans with their student loans and some relief, because we did it in 2008 through 2013, when all the craziness happened with the economy. We were bailing out banks. We were bailing out billionaires and millionaires, and you know, we were saving people, like, I mean, who are living lives and have access to resources that the regular American can never even dream of, and they got bailed out. And I'm still waiting to see, like, okay, that bailout that they received, what was the return to the American people? But again, I'm not an economist. I'm just, you know, a former high school principal, you know, just making commentary. But I am 100% in support in any kind of relief that Americans can get when it comes to these student loans, because they're crazy. So let's go back to see what else is in the news here. Bloomberg opinion: rough and tumble education of a central banker. Okay, University of Minnesota med students pledge to fight white supremacy. That's interesting. Fox News. Let me just see. They pledged to fight white supremacy at ceremony. A medical school pledge ceremony was spoken by students at the University of Minnesota Medical School, in raising eyebrows for the wording students reportedly recited. Among other promises made publicly in August, the med students pledged to honor all indigenous ways of healing that had been marginalized by Western medicine, and to fight white supremacy, colonialism, and the gender binary. That's interesting. This is definitely worth reading. I'm definitely going to, find the time to go back and read this. Let me see if I can play this video. But my only concern, whenever I play videos, is whether or not the YouTube algorithm is going to be like, wait a minute, copyright it, and shut me down. But that's interesting, because again, like we're talking about people getting educated and going into fields that might not necessarily exist, or or if you're going to commit to something like medical school, getting that degree, there has to be more than just I just got a medical degree. how do you justify the cost of it and be able to do something with it? And I think it's interesting that these young people, I say young people, that these medical students added in the pledge to honor indigenous ways of healing. Because let's be honest here, before Western medicine, which, I mean, let's say the foundation of Western medicine came from many places that wasn't the West. They learned from Africa, they learned from Asia, they learned from all these quote unquote indigenous peoples around the world, who lived and thrived in some of the most harshest environments, and didn't have the constant of plagues and pandemics, attacking their population. And it's interesting because I wonder, like, what would happen if we really spent time, adding into what it already exists right now in this modern medicine space, like all those traditional healing methods, that kept people alive for many years, rather than the society that we live in now that's all about just medication. Medication, chemical compounds that nowadays are artificially created that don't even belong in our bodies, but we take them because, let's be honest with you, half the time we have no choice. We're just like, listen, I'm trying to feel better, I'm trying to survive, but we don't even know what's half the time what we're taking. We read the label or whatever we're told is on the label, or that's in the medicine, and we have to accept it. We don't have to accept it, but we do. So to honor all indigenous ways of healing, which is great, because when we talk about just indigenous, yes, indigenous people to America, but also the people and their indigenous ways from wherever they came from, whether you're African, whether you're from the Caribbean, whether you're from South Central America, wherever you are, Asia. What are the things that they were surefire that once were applied worked? And why aren't we adding that into the canon of medicine, period? So that's dope. I like that. I'm excited for young people who are going into the medical field that they can lean on that. They can lean on that level of that movement towards making sure that what we're providing speaks to who we are, culturally as well. Then Wall Street Journal has a story here. It's an opinion piece. How to end the epidemic of failure in American schools. Whew. By Jeb Bush. That's interesting. Is that Jeb Bush, the former governor of Florida? I'm just scrolling to the bottom, but usually they have a little byline to tell who it is. Yep. Listen. So this was written by Mr. Bush. It says Mr. Bush served as governor of Florida from 1999 to 2007. He's the founder and chairman of Excellent Ed and Excellent Ed in Action. Interesting. I wonder what they do. I'm gonna have to look that up. But we also know that his brother was the president doing the architecture and the design architecture, the building of No Child Left Behind. George Bush, second, not senior. Let me see here real quick. While much of the U.S. has returned to normal after the pandemic, the long-term academic harm to students endures. This year is the first time many public school students returned into in-person learning without mask requirements or learning disruptions. That's nearly 2.5 years since the beginning of the pandemic. For younger children, that's 25% or more of their lives so far. Yeah, my son was born March 3rd of 2020, and 12 days later, New York City schools shut down, and we were quarantined. So he spent the bad part of the beginning of his life, not outside, not being around other people outside of his sister and his parents. And I'm pretty certain I know what's in here because a lot of the issues the pandemic created we all face. It doesn't matter where you are, in Florida or wherever you are, around the country, even around the world, because right now there's definitely a correlation between the dip in test scores that's happening around. That's been happening. Like, these are the lowest test scores in literacy in 30 years. In 30 years, and but the problem is this gap has existed, at least for black and brown children, for longer than the 30 years. Even more so for black children, because you have to remember, at one point in time, it was illegal. It was literally illegal to educate black folk in this country. Yes, people might say, "Oh, slavery and everything else," but then after slavery, what happened? If you weren't fortunate to be in a space or community where there was a strong village sense of development for black folk, you still didn't have access to learning. You didn't. And if you did, you were learning enough to just be able to get by versus, being proficient as a reader and a writer, as a thinker. Because again, not to say education makes you a better thinker, but it makes it better for you. It makes it easier for you to express yourself. So these were gaps that existed. Look. I mean, think about it. Was it Ruby Bridges and all these spaces, and the governor of Alabama, Mississippi, and swearing and getting the National Guard to stop kids from going to school, and all these things. And these were things that happened. Even though the history books want to put it in black and white, no, there was color television back then. It was color television, and that's another thing that I talk to my students about all the time. If you've ever noticed, whenever you're going through the history books and they're talking about the 60s and 70s, everything's in black and white. Everything's in black and white. And it's funny because I asked my students, why do you think it's in black and white? Why did they put the pictures from the 60s and 70s in black and white? And it's funny because they were like, yeah, because that's all they had back then. My students have said that. That's all they had back then. It wasn't all black and white. I'm like, no. Let's go on the internet. Let's Google it. Let's Google the highest grossing films of the 60s and 70s, even in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And the kids are like, wait a minute, they're in color. Yeah. And pretty good color too. But if you keep things in black and white and you connect black and white with being so far back in history, then you separate yourself by saying that happened so long ago, we've made all these advances, rather than this is so recent that some of the people who were perpetrators or they were doing all the wrong against people of color are still alive. And a lot of them are still in power. But yeah, so all those things academically, and with the achievement gap has been going on for such a long time. So, it's so bad that right now, the last time I looked at the weight card, it said that to close the achievement gap, and hopefully I'm not misquoting this, but it was definitely a crazy number. To close the achievement gap in mathematics, they said it would take like 125 years, at the rate we're going, for black children to catch up with white children in America. It's like 125 years, something crazy. But I think that was for math. I think for literacy, reading and writing, something like that, I want to say that number was like almost over 200 years. They're like, at the rate we're going, unless we do something really soon, that's how long it's going to take for that gap. Meaning when you test these children, the gap between the average performance for one group and another, that space. So if one group is performing at 70, another group is performing at 50, for that gap to close, it would take literally, let's be honest here, over 100 years. And it's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, right now we, they're saying that how we have how to end this epidemic. Man, it's been happening for such a long time. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think I'm going to see a solution in my lifetime. I'll just be honest with you. I think all I can expect is that we're in those spaces where we have control. We can really build capacity and really inform our communities what we should be doing and building to fix it. But the thing is, when we talk about the whole entire picture, this is a huge country, and there are spaces in this country where things are so bad, where schools like, man, watch the movie Waiting for Superman. Watch those movies. Go do some research about Detroit schools. Amazing city before for a while, just run incredibly badly. The Bronx. Once upon a time, the Bronx was burning, and it's funny because you read like Jonathan Kozol's book, Savage Inequalities, and I remember I read that book as the summer before I started teaching, and I was kind of shocked because he's writing about these schools in the South Bronx, and he's writing about them in, I think it was like the late 80s or mid 80s, but I know it was at least a decade or more before I started teaching. And I walked into the buildings and I was like, did I read a live play-by-play of what's happening in schools? Because what he wrote in his book was no different from what I saw in the buildings. So this epidemic it's a cancer that just won't go away, and I'm praying that we find a way, man, because I'm terrified for my children. My son's 2.5, my daughter's 4. What are they looking forward to? Or is our only option to not send them to public school? To incur the cost of putting them in a private school or just homeschooling them. Because again, as an educator, as a 17-year veteran teacher, dean, principal, I've been if it's happening within the school building, I've done it, instructionally, and I know what's out there, and I know what good looks like when you're in control of it. I also know what bad looks like when no one's in control, and I don't want my children to be in that space, and I don't want any child to be in that space. So this definitely concerned me. So let me scroll through here and see what else here. Perspective I lost. I thought, what is this? Washington Post. I thought at least 50% credit for no work. Oh, I thought at least 50% credit for no work was okay. I was wrong. Oh. See, you don't want to get me on this. See what it says here? DC teacher reveals chaos unleashed by trying to not be too hard on kids. I've not read this article, and I'm definitely going to come back around, but I'm going to use just what I see here as a topic to just let you know. There is some issues that we're having. Actually, let me pause real quick. I've been talking. Listen, if you want to join me in the conversation, listen, and you want to talk about anything I've been talking about or anything you want to just throw into the mix, do me a favor, go ahead and hit me up on the link tinyurl.com /TSP-video-guest. Now it's scrolling on here, and you hit me up there, and I will let you into the conversation, and we can chop it up. We can chop it up, and you can give me your perspective. So the lines are open. Feel free to jump on here. So again, one of the issues from the pandemic, and I'll speak about this freely. The pandemic was one of the worst experiences that I've experienced in my adulthood. I saw things that I never thought I would ever see. I witnessed and felt fear in ways I've never felt as far as my own health, and not even my own health, my children. I was terrified for my daughter, who was like 2 at the time, for my son, who was a newborn, then their mother, and it was just so much. Like, just then my parents, my siblings, like my friends, then people that I knew started to pass away from COVID-19, and it was a lot. Then all of a sudden, now we were doing school from home. It was remote. All of a sudden, learning how to use this technology, getting kids on there, trying to engage them. and then students emailing me, telling me about like what was going on and their depression and their fear and their loss. Kids who were displaced, because this economy shut down, people were not getting paid. So all these things, definitely between sympathy and empathy, and experience it yourself, created, rightfully so, the understanding coming back into the school building. We had to be understanding. We had kids who had not been physically in the building for a year and a half. We had to be understanding. We had to make sure that we had all the resources in place for mental health supports, social emotional supports, all these different things. And what ended up happening was when we came back, we understood we had to be softer and gentler and really help kids get reacclimated into schools. But however, what ended up happening, if you're calling in, I will. You're in the green room now. So what's going to happen as soon as I'm able to, I'll bring you into the conversation. So you don't have to jump back off. Just wait patiently, and I'll bring you into the conversation. Brother Solomon, I got you. I saw your comment. I got you. My bad on that. I would definitely connect with you on this, and we'll make time to jump on a Zoom call to go over to talk about your resume. So we were being told, by the system overall, like let's be kinder, let's be more lenient, and rightfully so. I understood that, but one of my issues was this: where did we draw the line between saying, hey, we're going to be not forgiving, I'm trying to find the right word, understanding, and not pushing too hard. And my fear was this, that if that became the norm, because of the pandemic, we were just more going to push and really establish high expectations for our students. It was only going to take us that much longer to get them back on board. And I saw this. I saw it. I saw kids and families, for whatever reasons, some people were taking advantage of it and saying, like, I can't do this work. I can't do that. I can't do this. And I just saw the writing on the wall. I was like, man, if we don't, really get control of things and get our students back as quickly as possible into a pace, of really meeting expectations and getting that work done, it's going to be much harder, over as time passes. And it's funny because look at this article here. This is October 23rd at 8 a.m. This was posted, right? And I was asking myself this question over a year ago. And what I did in my school was this. I was like, listen, we're going to make sure we have every resource you need. I added two guidance counselor, social worker to my team. I give every grade, access to a professional for supports, and what we did with two guidance counselors, we're doing with now 4, because the one thing I knew I was going to do is this. I was going to make sure I had the mandate established to all my teachers that we are going to teach, and we're going to make sure our kids are catching back up again. Because again, the time away was too long. And yes, we were remote, but it's different. Learning virtually is very different. Teaching virtually is very different, especially if you've never done it before. And it requires, repetition over a period of time. All of a sudden, all my teachers became first-year teachers, because now they were sitting in front of a computer trying to teach kids whose cameras were turned off, kids who were in temporary housing, kids who were, I had this one young man, I love this dude to death. This young man would jump into my class, because I was teaching as well during the pandemic. he would jump into my class from the basement of the bodega he was working at. And for those of you who are not from New York, a bodega is like, what we call in LA, liquor store, that corner store. He would be in the basement, logging on for class in the mornings. But he was like, yo, I got to contribute to my house, And for me, yes, I wanted so much to be like, bro, listen, just, show up whenever you can. But my heart and spirit said, no, you got to recognize him, praise him for what he's doing, but also maintain that high expectation. And at that point, he was a junior, and he was struggling. But guess what? Right now, he's a freshman at Utica College, in upstate New York. Kid from Brooklyn. Now he's a college man. Because for me, I was like, yo, you still got to do the paper. Because guess what? I still got to work. I still got to feed my family. The pandemic doesn't stop that. I got to find a way to make sure. So the resilience that my students needed, I had to emphasize that. They had to be resilient to be successful. So yeah, a lot of schools were hands off and laid back. And now they're like, man, how do we get control back? Like this says, it says here, again, DC teacher reveals chaos unleashed by trying not to be too hard on kids. And I think it was a bad idea. And my thing is, I don't believe in being hard on kids, but I do believe establishing high expectations and making sure children and young people are kept to that high expectation standards and letting them know why this is important. Like I said, I've said this before, this past school year, my last year as a principal, every graduating senior got into college. Every single one of them got into college or a institution of higher learning. So every student who was walking away had a post-secondary institution, whether it was a college, university, trade school, as an option for them. Every single one of them. Because again, how did all of them get into colleges and all these other schools? Because they were academically qualified. Why were they academically qualified? Because my thing is, I did not take my foot off the gas when it came with what I expected to be happening in classrooms, so my students can graduate and be able to move forward and be successful. So yeah. So let me go ahead and bring in a caller. Let me first of all get this off the screen. And hello, Aislinn. Thank you again for calling, and thank you for being patient. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Awesome. So what do you have to contribute this evening?
Okay, so pretty much what you were talking about, I think it was perfect, especially for tonight. Because how you were saying about the student loans, how the government was like pausing it and all this stuff. And when you said you applied, I applied as well. Because honestly, I've been trying to get out of my debt ever since I started college. Literally, I was going into college, my undergrad, then doing my master's. I received a little bit of financial aid, but it wasn't enough. But I was so thankful that I didn't have to take out loans, more loans on top of that. So I did was pretty much I paid it off while I was in school. Like whatever money I saved, I paid it off day by day. And now just knowing that I still have a little bit of debt left, but at least it's not like a big amount, like a big chunk. So I'm very grateful that I did that in my part, and I was very smart and realistic to even do that, because not a lot of people do it in that way. And I was remembering one of my coworkers in my old job, like she told me, she was like, I finished studying and everything, but I still have like $50,000 in debt. And I said to her, in my case, that's not the case. The case is that I paid it off, and now I have less in debt. And she was like, how much you have? And I was telling her, I have like $10,000 in debt. That's it, pretty much. And she was like, wow, how did you do that? How did you manage? And I was just like, I paid it off. That's all I did. And she was like, you were very smart to do that. So I was just telling her my experience, and I told her, like, you should do that as well. So she said that she was going to start to do it that way. But anyway, I applied, and now that I know that this debt could be, off my shoulders, away off my shoulders, a relief, because especially when I applied to college, like I wasn't like other people, like I didn't get all the
all
help
the
that I
help
can
that I
get for
can get for
financial aid.
financial aid. I was at least
Lucky to get
lucky to get
something from
something
Mercy
from
because they
Mercy
had
because
like
they had like
grants and
grants and
stuff.
stuff.
But
But
like when it
like
came
when it
to
came to
FAFSA and all
FAFSA
this
and all
stuff,
this
like
stuff,
I
like
didn't
I
receive
didn't receive
anything
anything
because like
because
my
like
parents
my
make a
parents
high
make a high
income.
income.
So
So
just the
just
fact
the
that I'm
fact
gonna
that I'm
get
gonna
this
get
off my
this off my
shoulder, it's a big grace, and at the same time I can show all these people who are like me in that situation that for us especially it was not fair, because there are people that we know, like either we know or we see in our world that they take advantage of this, and it's not fair for us to have to pay for what they receive you know um so I'm very grateful for that. And then when you were talking about the pandemic and how it influenced kids and learning and all this stuff, like how you were saying that you were feared for your kids and for all of your family and all this stuff, like that was me in the pandemic, but I felt like I had a sense of peace when I came to my job and I was teaching my students and showing them that it's okay, like that everything was going to be okay despite them living in a pandemic. And with my students, I was very proud of them because I've never had to tell them more than once, like to put on the mask. Can you please, like, put it over your nose or anything like that? No. Like literally the beginning of the year, we showed a video and we said to them, like, it was a Jack Hartman video saying like, okay, we need to put the mask because of this and because of that. And they really did so well with it. And they encouraged their friends to even do it as well when there were times that either they would have it like here sometimes because they were like jumping or playing or just doing music and movement. So they would always be like, no, 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 but Miss Asen said to put it, to put it on top of your nose and stuff. Um, and they understood that even though they wanted to play with each other, um, I've never had to like reinforce it more than once. I would just tell them like, it's okay, we need to have our space because we're human beings and all this stuff. So I felt like they did an amazing job, that especially for 3 to 5 years old, that was something that I did not expect for them to even do. Even with remote learning, like that was something that I was very grateful for because I never had to reinforce it to them. Like they knew when it was time to come to school, they knew that they had to pay attention to learn. And we would always have a rule, which was to raise their hands if they wanted to speak. So they would raise their hands. I would be like, okay, this is going to be Jerry's turn, and then it's going to be Greg's turn, and they did so well in that. And they really voiced like what they wanted to say. If they wanted to tell me something that was personal, I would tell them, okay, you can answer my question and then you can tell me something personal. Um, and they did such an amazing job. And I'm very grateful that I didn't have to deal with what other teachers had to deal with. But just the experience in general was,
that's awesome.
I guess, kind of scary in a way because I remember we had this workshop and it was about mental health and everything. And it was a nice Korean lady, she was like teaching our workshop, and she had mentioned about like death. And and it was literally when my uncle passed away, and I was just like listening to her and trying to be there, but I was just like, I don't want to hear what you have to say about death. I really don't. So literally I put my volume down, I looked at her, and I didn't want to hear it. And then after that, I said my honest opinion. I said, I love how the workshop, how you explained it. It helped me a lot, but I did not appreciate this and this and this. And so, and she said to me, I'm glad that you gave your experience. It was very helpful, very thoughtful. And she also said that it really was helping her that she heard my honesty about that, because she didn't want me to keep that inside.
Yeah.
And I said to her, thank you so much for feeling that way. And I was very happy to give my honesty out there because I'm not a person that likes to give it all the time like that. But when it's something that personal and it bothers me, I have to say it because,
I really
you know,
appreciate. I really appreciate that. I want to go back to something you said. Not something that you said, but I want to go back to your student loans. So, as someone who I was in college, probably before you were even born. So, so what advice would you give right now to young people who are who are um, who are in college, or they are or preparing to go to college, about student loans? Because you did something interesting. You said you went to Mercy,
Mhm.
go Mavericks. I'm an alumni of Mercy as well
Yeah.
for my
Whoop.
first master's. You went there and you didn't get all the loans that like you didn't get all the grants and scholarships that a lot of people. And the reality, a lot of people don't get all that.
Yeah.
People make it seem like a lot of people get it, but vast
Yeah.
majority of people who go to college end up having to look at, man, do I need to get loans? How do I do this? Do I have to get another
Yeah.
job?
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
what advice would you give to someone who's in college right now, or someone who's about to go to college,
Hmm.
as far as how to best come out of college without the burden of those loans?
Okay. So my advice to fellow students that are going to be in college right now is just be wise about your decision of where you want to go to school. And also pick a school that's going to give you the best financial aid possible, but also that you don't have to pay a lot of money just to go to college, but also to be upfront and pay as much as you can when it comes to student loans. Whatever savings you have, it doesn't have to be like $10,000, but if it's like $2,000 that you have in your bank account, like put it towards that. Like put it towards that. Everything that you save, you give it towards that. Just based on my experience, especially people right now who are watching that maybe they don't have parents who were born here. I would research this. I would really research, like, FAFSA um and HEOP and all these other financial aids that you can get. Just research it, but also research um how can you get advice about financial aid as well. Because I had friends that went to college or family that went to college, and I would ask them for advice about things that came to going to college. And I'm very grateful, especially for the high school that I went to, because they gave us a lot of information when it came to financial aid, about colleges, about deadlines that were due, about also the events that was to knowing information about financial aid. So I would give you that advice as fellow students. And just be wise about your career, because you want to be there doing something that you love and not wasting your time and wasting your money as well.
Thank you for that. So, shout out to Becca, Bronx Early College Academy,
Yeah.
in the South
Whoever's
Bronx.
watching, please watch.
Yes, that's where I became an assistant principal.
Hmm.
And I was there. I was there for that whole entire college process you went through. And
Yeah.
even in my last school as a principal, a lot of what I did there was in the same vein of what happened at Bronx Early College Academy.
Yes.
Having a strong and knowledgeable college advisor, someone who understands it's not just about going to college.
Hmm.
That's one step.
Yeah.
It's about the affordability of it, and not creating debt that's unnecessary for yourself. For yourself, listen. I'm if I can go back in time and do this all over again, I would have gone to a community college. I would have done my 2 years there for as cheap as possible, then do really well there, and then go after those full ride scholarships. You know, and do it that way. But again, I didn't have
Hmm.
that. I went to a school
Yeah.
where the emphasis was just to get into college, and they celebrated you got into college. Then once you got in there, you had to kind of figure it out from there. So
Yeah.
I agree with
Yeah.
you. Research. You got to do
Yeah,
that
it's
research.
yeah,
You got to
when you
make
were
sure.
saying about when you were saying about how we had a good support system when it came to college. I was very grateful that I even went to Mercy, because I was even thinking about Mercy at the top of my head in the beginning. Like, I applied to all these schools. My first choice that I wanted to go to was Manhattan College, but I didn't get into Manhattan College, and I was like, bummer, like, what am I going to do now? And then I still remember to this day, like, I go inside the office, to the counselor's office, and Miss Cuevas, who was the counselor at the time, she had said to me, "Oh, look, like, Mercy has all these amazing programs, and even for your career that you want to do, like, it's there for you, and they give you a little bit of financial aid, but it would be a great opportunity for you at a great place. And a lot of the people who work there also went. And I was like, okay, like, I'll see if I get in and all this stuff. And I did get in. So I was like, okay, great. Like, I'm going to Mr. Njoku school and all these other people that went. And honestly, I'm very grateful that I went, because I now know like what knowledge you guys have received. But also the program, I felt like it was a benefit, because if I would have gone to a private college, I would have probably been scared. I probably would have been clueless in some things. I would have not known how to do a lot of things. Especially it's like a bigger class size, because Mercy is very small. Sometimes it'll be big based on the circumstances, but I felt like that small class size was very beneficial, because I got to learn a lot better, but also that one-on-one connection was a lot better
Yeah,
than if I would have gone to a private school.
yeah, and that's very important. And the last point that that you talked about was, being very intentional what you study. And I want to say this. I've been saying this, I say this to my students more recently, because as you get older, you start to gain wisdom, and you start to realize, okay, that and the wisdom that I share now is your passion and what you do to put money on your passion, the thing that you love to do, or you think you love to do, and what is going to actually pay your bills, are two different things.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, it might be the same thing together, but often that's not the case. So I tell students, listen, you're going to go to college and invest. If you're going to go to college and invest in education, make sure that what you're doing is what you're willing to do to make money, to get an
Yeah.
income, to be able to take care of yourself. Because again, I am degreed up in education. I have two master's
Yeah.
degrees, Columbia, Mercy,
Hmm.
and all this other stuff. But what am I passionate? I'm passionate about doing this. I'm passionate about technology. I'm passionate about
Yeah.
about media. But it's funny because my first degree was in film and media studies, but that's a coincidence, because when I majored in that, this didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it didn't exist, and it wasn't. And I didn't major saying, oh, maybe one day. Once I got that degree, I was like, darn it, like I can go work and make movies, which I don't want to do. I just love it for a different reason. Wasn't sure, so I'm lucky to be in this position. But I know people
Yeah.
who've gotten degrees, and they sound great while you're doing it. When it sounds great. You go into the real world and you're like, wait a minute, it's not even transferable. What is this? What do I even do with this? And that's why a lot of people get caught up in with these loans and these financial disasters, because they were pushed into spaces that no one gives any guidance. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, financial aid resource, the HEOP. The thing I love about HEOP was that the early education opportunity programs is across New York State, because it's not just about financial aid; it's also about getting guidance, having those
Hmm.
counselors telling you, "Hey, how are classes going? You're majoring in this. Oh, that's awesome. So what do you plan to do with that?" Because
Yeah.
again, they know. Listen, the worst thing in the world you can do is
Yeah.
get that degree,
Yeah.
and you get into the real world. It doesn't work out. Then you end up back in school to get another degree. Then you're getting more
Yeah.
financial aid. Then you get another degree. Trying to find the thing, and before you know it, you're $200,000-300,000 in debt. So that's a,
Yeah.
that's the thing that I think is very, very important. And I want to thank you so much for again sharing that, because I think what you just said is going to help a lot of people, especially young people who are out there trying to figure out, like, man, what does this mean for me? Because the great thing about this whole thing about the loan forgiveness, I think it's making a lot of people really think about, like, why are we even in this position we are in right now,
Yeah.
as a country. But it's over $1 trillion. People are in debt
Yeah.
over $1 trillion.
It's like how you were saying the other day, like to give finance to, literacy, and to math, and all these things that are more important than them giving money for something else, is true. Because how can we show the world that we do our jobs with passion if they just see the opposite of what majority of these teachers are doing? And they don't see a lot of those passionate teachers in the classroom, or they don't get to see us in the right way, because they're not giving us a chance to show that. they probably go into the classroom at like the wrong time, and that's where they see the frustration, the stress, and all this stuff that these other teachers do, you know um so that's why I'm saying that, because it's just how you said, like sometimes it's frustrating, but we have to deal with that. But I feel like with our voices, just saying it out loud is something that we can change that,
Yeah.
for the next generation of kids.
Well, Aislinn, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show up. Thank you again for calling in. And
You're welcome.
again, for those of you who don't know, Aislinn, one of my former students, and who's now an educator herself. So I am so proud to to say part of my legacy as an educator is to have other educators, that I've had at least some level of impact on. So thank you so much again. Say hello to your parents
You're
for me,
welcome.
and we'll
I
talk
will.
soon again. All right.
Okay. Yes.
Have a good night.
Bye.
So, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for being here this evening. Um, Sundays, I just go through the news reports and see what's going on in the news, and hopefully, as the spirit moves, something comes out of it. But again, this is a call-in show. I do talk a lot. I want to say this right now. I talk a lot, and I can keep talking. It's funny because the kids at that school, Bronx Early Catholic Academy, used to say, "Yo, Mister, yo, we're gonna start calling you Bishop Njoku." I was like, "Why you gonna call me Bishop Njoku?" They're like, "Yo, but you like to talk. You're like a TD Jakes. You just start talking and you start getting all like, And I'm like, okay, but I'm a passionate kind of person. So, but again, this is a call-in show, and it's very simple. You want to join the conversation, you just type in the URL, tinyurl.com/tsp-video-guest, and you're in here. And you could be anonymous. You don't have to be on camera. I've had people call in who chose to keep the camera dark, and I'm like, I'm 100% fine with that. You don't have to even type in your real name. I'm fine with that as too, because I know there are a lot of teachers out there and educators, principals too, and superintendents who dare not speak about how they really feel about anything because they don't want to be admonished or to be singled out or to incur the wrong type of attention and to be able to keep their jobs. So again, I want to create a space for people to be able to talk about things, what's happening in schools, and I'm fine with where I am right now because I can speak on my experiences over the 17 years of not even 17, over the course of my life, because I went to school as a student, so I saw things there, and I have a good perspective now because I can look back and say, hey, that thing that happened in the 10th grade, when I was in 10th grade, now I understand why it's happened. Now I understand why teachers were doing this in the classroom. I now understand why my principal was like this because I've been in those shoes now. And I think it's very, very, very important that this space continues to be a space that really feeds and pours into people, especially educators, so we can really do what we need to do for our kids. So please do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, follow on any platform that you're watching on. Those of you who missed me out on Facebook, I do apologize. I will figure out what happened on Facebook. I think it just got disconnected. But tonight I was on YouTube, I was on LinkedIn, I was on Twitter. And also, some people might have been watching on TikTok. I had TikTok here going, and I'm experimenting with piping in the audio right into TikTok live, and hopefully, I hope by Wednesday I might also be live on Instagram. Trying to build an audience. So please do me a favor, tell other teachers, people you work with about this space. Let's build this space. Again, my goal is in time to do less talking and more listening and giving voice and space for educators to speak. And from wherever you are around the world, especially here in America, because we have a lot of work to do and people don't really know what it's like to be in our classroom, to be in our schools. And not just for teachers, but also administrators. I'm making this very, very clear. Like, I am not one to be like teachers versus principals, because guess what? I was a teacher, and a lot of people don't like principals, or they hate their principals, or don't like their principals for whatever reasons. But until you're in that seat, it's a ridiculous space to be in. And the most stressful time of my life was the 6 years I was a principal. But again, I love every moment of my career as an educator. So again, let me stop talking. I gotta go to bed. I gotta be at work in the morning. I appreciate all of you for being here this evening. Please be safe, be well, take care of yourselves. Until Wednesday, 10 p.m., I'll be back on again with my co-host, Archie Tyson, for the Ivy League Hood Rats. Two men who went from the hood, and somehow went from the gutter to the Ivy League glass and broke the Ivy League glass ceiling, and we get to really inspire and talk about what's happening from both our perspective as males who've been principals who are now working in the private sector in educational technology. All right, enough with all that. Have an amazing night. Be well and be safe. All right.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.